We do not have a 24-hour sun in the south.
The 24-hour sun in Antarctica doesn't work on a flat Earth. On a flat Earth, you can't have a 24-hour sun, a midnight sun in Antarctica. And I totally agree.
In the flat Earth model, we say there isn't a 24-hour sun in the south, and there isn't.
There is no midnight sun in Antarctica.
Well, hi everyone, this is Bob the Science Guy, and we have another episode of Witsit on the Flat Earth debate. Before we go into this next clip, let me explain to you what the scientific method is. Now, I've talked about this a number of times before, but it bears repeating. Now, the scientific method, not the scientific checklist, is an organized way to approach the acquisition of knowledge and the interpretation of data. And it is tailored to each experiment to avoid having the investigator fool themselves. The first thing you do is you develop a question. Now, that question can come from an observation in nature or anything in the natural world. And by natural world, I mean anything that doesn't have to be accepted on faith or is supernatural. So, for example, the growth rate of trees is a natural phenomenon. The orbit of an asteroid is a natural phenomenon. Now, when you have this question formulated well, you develop a hypothesis. In other words, you propose an answer to your own question. Okay? Then you assume that that answer is correct, and you use it to make a prediction. Then you design an experiment to test that prediction in the real world. Then you perform the experiment and gather your data. You interpret the data and report your findings, and you submit that data for what's called peer review. Now, peer review is very specific. Peer review is not whether your data is valid. It's whether or not your experiment actually could potentially determine a yes or a no answer to your hypothesis. In other words, was your experiment well designed? Now, as far as your data goes, initially it is accepted, and other investigators will attempt to reproduce your experiment and see what kind of results they get, and then they will compare those results to the results that you reported. So let's go see how Nathan Oakley responds to Austin Witsit when he comes back to the show to try and talk about this again.
What do you think about the fact that you actually made way more damning statements about this than I did? I never even claimed a model. I never claimed anything to do with the flat Earth model. Can you find me claiming a flat Earth model somewhere?
Man,
I've been talking online for like 7 years. You should be able to find it pretty easily.
I told you. Are you going to shut up, or are you just going to carry on being toxic after you ask me something? I'll give you an answer. See how long it takes for him to interrupt me because he's toxic and triggered. Now, this is inconsequential to us. I tried to explain this to you and the rest of the Flat Earth community ages ago. I've been doing it for a year. It doesn't make any difference. All you've got is the spin train while you tell people, it's really good that you're being called an idiot for disproving your own model. Now, while you can try and distance yourself from that which is being reported about you, makes no difference what you say after the fact. History's been documented. You look awful. We tried to reach out. We tried to help. We tried to point you in the direction of decent arguments, but we weren't successful, Witsit. Now you're going to have to deal with that.
Okay, you said nothing because you have nothing to say. You have a script. So
Let me do a quick shout out to J-Bone. Okay. Explain how the sun works in Antarctica in FE. Why? Did they make a claim about it? Who cares? I mean, we've got Witsit here in our Discord server currently, and he's been in Antarctica and observed this sun going around and around in circles. But it matters not to us here at Flat Earth Debate at all. It's inconsequential. In order to make a claim, now that you've made this observation, you must affirm the consequent. Let me explain. If P, then Q. Q, therefore P. Affirming the consequent. It's a formal logical fallacy. If I assume Earth is a sphere and Antarctica is antipodal from the north, then I will observe a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. I do observe a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, therefore Earth is a sphere with me assuming antipodal positioning? No, that's a fallacy.
Let's go over two arguments. The first one is the affirming the consequent argument, which is a logical fallacy. And the affirming a consequent argument says that if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. So to put that in English, this fountain pen contains blue ink, P. If I write on white paper, the writing will be blue, Q. The writing is blue. Therefore, the fountain pen is filled with blue ink. Okay, this is a logical fallacy because this ballpoint pen also contains blue ink. And had I written with this blue ballpoint pen, I would also have blue writing on the paper. Now, to give an example of a valid argument, we'll use the closely related modus tollens. This fountain pen is filled with blue ink, P. If I write on white paper, the writing will be blue. The writing is not blue, therefore, I did not write with this fountain pen. There are two different basic approaches. Either one, you show that P logically leads to Q. The other is to show that any non-Q does not logically lead from P. If P is given a diameter of the circle, and Q is that that diameter will intersect the circumference of the circle at 90 degrees, you can show that any angle other than 90 degrees will not work. In other words, you show that given a diameter of a circle, if you try and make that diameter intersect the circumference of the circle at any angle other than 90 degrees, you can't do it. Now, in the final experiment, Nathan has what the final experiment was designed to show wrong. The 24-hour sun in Antarctica does not prove the globe. It disproves the Gleason model of the flat Earth, specifically a model of the flat Earth where it is a flat plane centered at the North Pole with the sun going around the North Pole between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn and surrounded by the ice wall that we call Antarctica. So the hypothesis is, based on geometry, if the Earth is flat, you cannot have a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. So to use the 24-hour sun in Antarctica and put it into a logical syllogism, you can say if flat Earth, based on the Gleason model, centered at the North Pole, surrounded by the ice wall, then there must be a sunset in Antarctica. In other words, you can't have a 24-hour sun because you have to have a sunset every day. We do not have a sunset every day. Therefore, it is not a Gleason model flat Earth. It disproves the flat Earth. Now, there were many other experiments that were performed in Antarctica. For example, they had a 360-degree sundial with the azimuth and length of each shadow at every hour pre-calculated based on a globe Earth model. That matched reality. So while the 24-hour sun didn't prove the globe Earth, it's strong supporting evidence for it. So is the length of the shadows and the azimuths of that 360-degree sundial. So are the gravity and weight determinations done by critical think. The sunspot activity, photographed with a proper solar filter, also could be compared to sunspot activity elsewhere in the world to demonstrate whether or not that was a reflection or a direct line of sight to the sun. I also believe, and because I was consulted about it, I don't know if they did it, but they also did polarization tests looking for the difference between reflection versus direct sunlight. Direct sunlight will not be affected by polarization. Reflected sunlight will. But let's continue with Nathan's attempt to play games with logical fallacies, recalling there is such a thing as a fallacy. Simply because you call something a logical fallacy doesn't make it untrue.
So it doesn't prove you're a globe. I make no claims in regards to what this observation would or would not prove, fascinating though it may be. Others may have done. Others may have ascribed so much importance to this that they subsequently decry their azimuthal, equidistant, North Pole-centric globe projection that they've been calling a flat Earth model as a result of their loss when they could have but failed to affirm the consequent also. That would be if Earth is a flat globe projection called the AE map, then we won't see a 24-hour sun. We don't see a 24-hour sun, therefore the Earth's the flat globe projection called the AE map. Also, the same exact fallacy. Precisely, surprisingly, what we've been pointing out for about the last year since this came up, utterly inconsequential to us here at Flat Earth Debate. What we point out is that Earth is measured flat. And upon it being pointed out to me immediately when it had occurred, I told the person informing me, that would be McToon, about his flat Earth measurement.
The fact that you're even using that logical fallacy shows that you completely misunderstand the purpose of the final experiment. The final experiment was not necessarily to prove the globe by looking at the 24-hour Antarctic sun. It was to rule out the flat Earth if there was a 24-hour sun. So to put it simply, there is a 24-hour sun at the North Pole on the flat Earth model. However, on the flat Earth model, aka the Gleason map model, centered on the North Pole with the sun going around it and an ice wall surrounding the whole thing, which is what we call Antarctica, it is impossible geometrically to have a 24-hour sun. So, if flat Earth, then no 24-hour sun. There is a 24-hour sun, therefore there is no flat Earth. But let's finish up with a little logical fallacy Tourette's by Nathan.
Fair enough.
Okay, can I say something real fast? Because I'm not.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, look. So what Oakley just said is correct. To even claim that it's proof of a globe requires the assumption of the globe. You have to affirm the consequence. If people had to claim that its setting proved the flat Earth, you have to affirm the consequence. It would have geometrically falsified the globe model that's reified and assumed. But if it's set, right, that's the only thing that would have been definitive there. But this is a good opportunity to literally break that down to people and explain that, and then point them to the actual evidence, which is that the Earth measures flat.
I see. It'd be a good opportunity to break this down after the fact. But we'd suggested to you this before the fact, and now you're saying that you failed. It'd be better that you followed our line of rhetoric. Oh, that's interesting. No, we don't care. We'd point this out to you. I hadn't finished talking, but you're a bit toxic and a bit triggered and need to interrupt me. I understand. No worries. I'll just try that again. Hopefully, Toxic Witsit and his failures on his spin train won't interrupt me for a second time. We'll see how we get on. No, Witsit, you failed miserably. You didn't point out that it was an affirming the consequent fallacy, or you'd have said that. Saying it after the fact doesn't change anything for us. We've been saying it for quite some time. As opposed to pointing out the fallacious reasoning that would be involved on both sides, you went down there to see if it happened or not. Now, you obviously wanted to know either way, sure. And that's being spun by the media as you failing as a flat earther and a flat earth being disproven as a result of this reification held up in false dichotomy by both flat earth and globe earthers when they affirm the consequent. That's what's actually happened.
But the long and the short of it, Nathan, as I have told you many times before, never in the history of science, at least since we've had peer-reviewed scientific journals, has a experiment, a hypothesis, or a set of data from an experiment been disproven by calling it a logical fallacy. Again, that's a fallacy. The only way that you can disprove this, Nathan, and the onus is now on you, you have to come up with a flat Earth model that accounts for 24-hour sunlight in Antarctica. You also have to account for the weight changes with latitudes at 80 degrees south, the prediction of the sundial, and the length of the shadows. And those shadow lengths were directly related to the altitude of the sun. And by altitude of the sun, I'm referring to the angle from the zenith. Now, one last little mathematical point, Nathan. If you were to take two crossed curved lines, forming kind of like a cursive X, those lines are not straight, yet they still form four angles. And if you don't understand that, that's a case of telling me that you never took calculus without telling me you never took calculus. So, this is Bob the Science Guy. Make sure you give me a follow and a like. Spread this around a little bit. Share it with your friends. And if you would like to help out with the Observatory and the Telescope Fund, the link to the Patreon is right in the description. Thanks again, guys, and take care. Happy New Year, everyone.